Hello, everyone, and welcome into 98.5 WJHI, LP Jeffersonville, home of the Red Devil Network, with you today on School Talk, September the 1st. I am Callee Abels. We have an interesting guest joining us today from Jeffersonville High School. We've gone around the realm of administrators and athletics, and now we're going to show you inside how we keep the athletes healthy and how the school is able to run here in a lot of ways from the athletic department, and that is with our trainer, Callee Thornton, joining the show. How are you doing, Callee?
Good. How are you, Clay?
Doing well. Well, I know this is a difficult time for you, especially right in the middle of, I should say the beginning of September. You've got football going, soccer for girls and boys. I know you have volleyball. Anything else I'm missing on the slate right now that you have to cover?
So we have boys tennis going on. Both our basketball teams just started workouts, and wrestling also just started workouts. So this is my busiest time of year.
I was going to say, it's about this time of the year, once you get into November, December, it's at those two times overlap period there. Everybody's going 100 miles an hour. For you, at this point, coming in as a trainer in your first year, what do you try to establish with the coaches? What are the relationships that you try to build, and what are some of the benchmarks that you want to hit as a trainer with the athletes and the coaches?
So I'm kind of lucky in that this is going to be, I'm going on my 5th year as a certified athletic trainer. This is my first year at Jeff, but as far as the coaches go, it's so cliche, but I always like to say, they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So it's all about building that repertoire with the boys and making sure that they know that you care about them as a person and not just an injury. So just going out there and making sure that I'm checking in with the coaches every day, hey, what do you have going on today? What injuries did you have? Did anything happen that I missed yesterday? And then, as far as with the players, it's just joking around with them and kind of building that relationship so that way when they do have an issue, they're comfortable coming to me instead of I'm that big scary person that's going to tell them they can't play. So it's all about just building those relationships and just making sure the coaches know that not only am I capable of doing my job, but I care about these athletes as a person.
For you, what's been the most difficult part post-COVID, because you had a stretch there from, and even over in the state of Kentucky, which we're close to, they're still not fully back in the sports swing. Indiana able to get back on track a little bit earlier. You have 5 months off for athletes, and a lot of the athletes, they're doing what they can to stay in shape. They're running outside. Maybe they're lifting some weights at home, but they don't have the usual amenities and options that they have from being at the school with a weight room and a practice field. What have been some of the biggest problems you've had thus far in terms of keeping players healthy and making sure the nutrition's there? Because they've had 5 months off. They've never had this long of a break before.
Yeah, it's been interesting. So we've actually seen a big increase. We actually just had a meeting with all the athletic trainers on the Indiana side the other day, and we were talking about this. We've seen a big increase in injuries, and it's just lack of conditioning. So these kids sat at home for 5 months, eating chips, playing Fortnite, doing all that fun stuff. And now, they came back and we gave, for example, for football, we had literally, we started July 6th and we had till August 14th was our first August 15th was our first scrimmage. So we had a little over a month to get these guys conditioned. And, they set all these restrictions on, you can only have 3 hours a day. You can only go this many days a week. And so it's really been a struggle to try to get these boys conditioned. I think we're doing an excellent job, but, there's a lot of work we can do. But, it's just teaching these boys that, hey, I know, and girls as well. Girls just typically are a little bit better at listening. Hey, I know you sat at home and drank soda for 5 months, but you've got to increase your water intake. Hey, I know, you laid in bed for 5 months, but on your off days, let's make sure we're getting a couple, miles of jogging in. Let's not just sit around. Let's keep up this conditioning because it can't happen in 4 days a week.
I would say one thing from somebody that was a bad athlete myself and looking back into when I played, the biggest problem I would assume to go with that, you talk about the conditioning, is from a weight standpoint, you go from, the summertime, especially from football players, soccer players, you're trying to build that muscle so that way when you go in through the season, you can be conditioned, you can handle some injuries, and you can be able to handle yourself physically against other opponents. They haven't had those summer workout programs the same way. I know we did things here, off and on with, what the state allowed, but it's got to be difficult for an athlete and the coaches right now. The athletes, I would think, from a weightlifting standpoint and a physical toughness, that durability is not there from what it would usually be if you have a regular summer conditioning program.
Right, and and unfortunately, a lot of the regulations we still can't get fully in the weight room. I know football, for example, has not been back in the weight room, and so these kids, are used to getting in the gym 2-3 times a week and lifting, and they're not able to. And so, we got back into, for example, with football and started hitting, and these boys, man, the first couple of days when we started hitting, it was rough. We had bruises, we had bumps, we had soreness that these boys haven't had because typically, on their off months, they're able to get into a gym on their own, and the gyms were closed. And kids just don't have the luxury of having, workout equipment in their homes. And so we were encouraging a lot of body weight stuff, but at the end of the day, that just doesn't replace what these kids needed.
With the weight room being closed off and having these issues, what are some of the solutions you've been able to come up with to try to combat that and at least be somewhat on track to where you'd like to be when it comes to physical durability and toughness and weightlifting and that whole process?
So we've done a lot of encouraging them to do body weight stuff. So body weight squats, planks, working on core, because a lot of your core exercises are just body weight. You don't need a lot of equipment for that. So we've really encouraged just core and cardio, because honestly, at this point, that's all these kids can do. And so, we're taking what we can get and encouraging what they can do. I know at my previous school, we gave out resistance bands to the kids to try to get them, and our strength coach posted some exercises online. So we've been trying to do stuff like that, but honestly, it's just hard because without these kids need that instruction and they need that focus that a coach provides, and at home they don't have that. So it's been interesting.
Here with Callee Thornton, the athletic trainer for Jeffersonville High School, talking a little bit about the difficulties of COVID and how that they're working their way around it when it comes to, training from a weightlifting standpoint, kids coming back on the conditioning side. I think one thing that is something that would be a positive to look at for you guys is that, and I don't know, I'd like to hear this from a trainer's perspective, is every coach that I brought in here, whether it's basketball, football, wrestling, volleyball, you name it, they're all a fan of playing multiple sports, it seems to be. They're all for having the flexibility, going out, keeping their kids active year-round. As a trainer, what is your position and kind of your thought process on playing multiple sports from a health standpoint? Do you think it's there's a benefit there for maybe keeping keeping flexible throughout the year, using different muscles, not over, playing basketball 12 months a year, you're not, using your arm over and over and again on a jump shot, you're able to move your body around. What's your position on multiple sports as a trainer?
So athletic training actually does a lot of research into what we call early sports specialization, which is picking one sport at an early age. And the research is actually super against that. So, it's really beneficial for these kids to play multiple sports, like you said, to use multiple muscle groups, to get moving, to, keep working year round. But it's also super important for these kids to get somewhat of a break. So we have these basketball players who, they may play soccer and basketball, but then they also play AAU, so they're not getting any time off. So while I think it's important to play multiple sports and use these multiple muscle groups, we also need to keep in mind the importance of giving these kids some time off and some time to recover.
What do you think, like say for basketball players, season ends March, you're done with sectionals and regionals, you're off for basically until you start conditioning for practice again, which is probably sometime in July or August or around that standpoint. How much would you suggest an athlete take off? Does it differ per sport, or what's the rationale on that as a trainer?
Yeah, so it's definitely different per sport. So, basketball is kind of what we consider a full body sport. You're using your legs, you're using your arms. So for them, I typically encourage 2 to 3 months. Where somewhere like baseball, you can push it to 3 to 4 because, it's typically they're just using that shoulder. And so it puts a lot of wear and tear on their shoulder, especially if they're playing school ball and then AAU or some kind of other travel league.
For you as a trainer, I know you said you spent some time at other schools and this is your first year here at Jeff, getting acclimated to everything. What inspired you to get into training? Because I've been around a few trainers at the college level at U of L in Kentucky, and I know the training staff a little bit over at Louisville City and talking to them about different things. I think people have a different perception of training from the outside than what people are in it. It's a much more job that it's not just of, taking care of the athletes. There's a lot more that goes into it from a mental standpoint, a safety standpoint, and I also think really from an intellectual standpoint, you have to have so much medical knowledge. I know you were talking about before the show how much time it takes in college to get a degree in training. What inspired you to go down this path, and how did you end up in training?
So I was an accident-prone kid. I've broken my left arm 5 times, my right arm 4 times. I've had 2 hip surgeries. So I'm an accident-prone kid. And so,
Sounds like you need a trainer. That's not good.
Yeah. So in high school, I had the luxury of having a really great athletic trainer by the name of Emily, and she really kind of inspired me to maybe pursue the medical field. And so I went into college thinking I was going to go into physical therapy. But I picked athletic training as a major because I thought, man, I really love sports, and this gives me a good start for physical therapy. And I played soccer in college for my first 2 years, and I dislocated my ankle and fractured it in 2 places. And my athletic trainer, she kind of blew me off. She said, no, it's just a sprain, you're fine, but we'll go get x-rays, just to be safe. And it turns out, like I said, I dislocated my ankle and fractured it in 2 places. And so she still kind of blew me off, and she was like, I can't believe this happened. And so I guess that kind of was a turning point for me. I wanted to make sure an athlete didn't have an experience like I had. I wanted to be the person that an athlete could go to, and I was going to believe them, and I was going to do everything I could in my power to make sure they got back onto whatever playing field they needed to get back on, and as quickly as possible. So that was kind of my story. And, it's been hard work. I have a bachelor's in athletic training. I have a master's in sports psychology, a master's in kinesiology, and I'm also a registered EMT. So I've gone through a lot of school to make sure that my kids are getting the best care they can get.
How much does sports psychology play into training? Because I would assume, obviously if somebody has a broken bone, you can't talk them through that, obviously. But if you have, from a conditioning standpoint, when you're talking to athletes, how you relate with them day to day, how much does that sports psychology part help you as a trainer?
Oh, I loved it. I think it's a big part of it that's overlooked. So a lot of the college levels and professional levels are getting into taking the sports psychology more seriously, but I put it into play a lot with my high schoolers because, an injury can be devastating, whether it's career-ending or it's your freshman with their first sprained ankle. Like, that's a devastating injury to them. And so this sports psychology, we use a lot of, imagery and goal setting to make sure these kids are staying in a mentally healthy place while they're recovering. We have a kid, who had a season-ending injury this year, and, it was tough. And then, we sat down, we talked about, okay, let's get your goals. Let's look at where you want to be in 4 months, and let's set short-term goals and long-term goals, and let's get there. And luckily that's been a good thing for him, and we've hit some of those short-term goals already. And so I think Coach Parker saw that, and now he, is a big fan of it. He's like, let's use that more. So I think it's something that people overlook, but I think it's something that's super important.
One thing that really interests me when I look at sports, and they talk about sports as being a groundbreaking for a lot of things, and I think one thing sports is really going to be turning the curve on here in the next 10 to 15 years as you look at the athletic training side is all the different ways for injury, preventing injuries, having different modes of medication. I know obviously in the past a lot of times people taking pills. Now there's more holistic ways maybe to look at it. What are your kind of just from the being around the field and research and hearing from things, what are some of the things that are coming next? Obviously, I've seen cryotherapy make a big impact over the last couple of years. I know over at U of L they use cryotherapy a lot. What are some of the things that come up to you as a trainer that you think, man, this is going to be something that we're really going to use down the road?
I think there's been a big push in nutrition, which seems kind of obvious, but, people kind of downplayed nutrition for a long time, and now it's coming out that, hey, if we increase these kids' nutrition and make sure they're getting what they need, we will have way better outcomes. I went to a seminar at one of our national athletic training conferences on the use of cherries, like just regular cherries from the grocery store, not like maraschino, but just like whole cherries for inflammation and reducing swelling in kids. So I think, like you said, that holistic, getting away from traditional meds, cryotherapy is a big one. I don't know. There's a lot of, and it's just interesting to see it grow and change every day. You can, this week we can say cryotherapy, and next week people are saying heat. So it's always growing and changing, and that's why research and making sure you're keeping up with everything is so important.
For you, as we look at wrapping this interview up here on School Talk with Callee Thornton, our athletic trainer at Jeff High, I know you mentioned short-term goals and having that imagery for the future. For you, what's the goal 1 year from now, 5 years from now? What do you hope to implement in this athletic department from a health standpoint and a relationship standpoint that you think, hey, this is something that can pay off dividends if we stick to a game plan here at Jeff High?
Well, I think, so as you know, I don't know if you know, maybe DT was the athletic trainer before me, and he was here he was here for 10 years. So I definitely have some big shoes to fill. And so I think over the next year, it's just building those relationships and making sure those coaches trust me and know that I want what's best for the athletes and know that I'm good at my job. And then, with girls basketball, we started some ACL prevention training this year, and we're implementing in that with football. And I'd like to implement that with every team, just to prevent injuries. And then just to continue this injury prevention versus I like to get ahead of the ball instead of playing catch up. So getting ahead of everything and implementing more of this injury prevention work and just building these relationships with these kids, and making sure that I'm a well-respected figure in the school because I also teach here as well. So it's just building myself as a staple in Jeffersonville.
Well, that's fantastic. Like I said, you mentioned it, but big shoes to fill with DT. Everybody loved him around here. Tremendous trainer, and I'm sure you're going to do a great job here. Callee, I appreciate you joining the show, and looking forward to having you back, having a few different conversations. Like I said, we're just touching the surface there with all the things in training. We could probably talk for hours about different injury prevention and everything else. It's a deep topic, but I love that you came in and hope to have you back.
All right, thanks, Clay.
That is Callee Thornton, the trainer for Jeffersonville High School Athletics, just in her first year, doing a great job for Jeff High, helping the team stay healthy and stay on the field, which has been very difficult, obviously, with COVID, and we mentioned some of those details throughout the show. We thank you for tuning in to School Talk here on September the 1st. If you'd like to rewatch this program, a few different options for you on the Red Devil Network. It will replay at 1 and 7 p.m. every day on the Red Devil Network. That's 98.5 FM and WJHI.com if you want to listen to the audio version. And then if you want to watch this on television, it'll be TV Cable 184. That is at 1 and 7 o'clock as well. And then later on, we will be posting the YouTube video. So if you were going out to Red Devils Network on WJHI YouTube there, you'll be able to pick it up. Just type in WJHI on YouTube. Red Devils Network is the name of the page, and you can check out this interview and more of School Talk on there. So for Callee Thornton, I'm Clay Abel saying so long here on School Talk, September the 1st. This is 98.5 WJHI, LP Jeffersonville, home of the Red Devil Network.